I am excited about the idea of them revisiting something as specific as Famicom Detective Club, and I feel that if they really do the Nintendo thing of trying to iterate and change, that it could be really beneficial this time. Hey everybody, David here. Boy, am I excited to talk to you about something different. Okay, so I want to preface this with the fact that I kind of told myself early on when I wanted to do more YouTube stuff that I was gonna stay away from Nintendo because I know what adults who like Nintendo can be like, and honestly, I fear them a little bit in an uncomfortable kind of way, you know, like how you would fear a particularly imposing looking clown. However, something was announced today that excited me so much that I really have to put that fear aside so I can talk about and genuinely feel this excitement. And it is excitement that kind of came out of nowhere for me. So last week, Nintendo puts out a weird little teaser with the hashtag Who is Emio? And it's just this weird little teaser, and it was clearly for and labeled for mature audiences, which is interesting to a degree because Nintendo doesn't typically truck in mature rated products or games specifically aimed at a more adult audience. I knew it would be good because first party Nintendo games tend to be good, and that seemed to be, at least to my eyes, what they were pitching. But I didn't watch the trailer. I didn't care. I didn't give a shit. Like, I really didn't. However, today, it has been revealed what that teaser was about. And I'm looking at the article that's talking about it on The Verge. This was written by Ash Parrish. They have revealed the full title is Emio, the Smiling Man, Famicom Detective Club. This is what excites me because I have a weird fondness for Famicom Detective Club. Okay, listen up. Famicom Detective Club is this duology of really early Japanese-style adventure games. And what I mean by Japanese-style adventure games is they are adventure games that are primarily menu-driven as opposed to more graphically driven. So when I think of a Western adventure game, even though early on some of them were entirely based on text, like the original King's Quest, I tend to think of the golden age of the point and click when LucasArts and Sierra were kind of competing with each other in the PC scene. And you saw games like King's Quest V, probably more importantly, King's Quest VI. You saw the Space Quest games, and you saw the tremendous output from LucasArts. I mean, you got Sam & Max Hit the Road, The Secret of Monkey Island, which is my personal favorite, Monkey Island 2, which is also a banger, The Dig, which I think is interesting, Full Throttle, all the way to, what was the last one? I guess the last one was technically Escape from Monkey Island, but I think most people kind of forget about that one and tend to think of Grim Fandango as the end of that era. Either way, Western adventure games have kind of continued on a very different path, where now we sort of have the cinematic adventure game that grew out of that, which is sort of what Telltale kind of pioneered with their first season of The Walking Dead. Now we're seeing some more of those coming out because the Telltale people got scattered to the winds. So we're seeing things like The Expanse and Star Trek Resurgence and yada yada. But Japanese adventure games kind of evolved on a different path into the visual novel. And I think the visual novel did kind of go side by side with the Japanese adventure game. I don't think that one necessarily predated the other. Both were very early in that scene of people playing games on their computers, but they sort of intertwine interestingly in a lot of ways, so that now, if you were to pick up a good visual novel, what I would call a good visual novel is something that has elements of those Japanese adventure games sort of rolled into it. There's more interactivity than just pushing the A button and reading. I do like traditional visual novels. I don't mean to make that to sound like if the visual novel isn't okay. I really like Steins Gate, and I really like Ace Attorney. And I think those are the two sort of ends of the spectrum that I'm talking about. I've read Muv-Luv, which has like, you just make choices at a couple of points. That's it. It's just reading a book, and there's pictures on screen and the same 6 music tracks that play interchangeably. And something about that works for me. I don't know. I just like reading. Sue me. Sue me. I like reading. What I like about Famicom Detective Club is that it feels like one of the earlier examples of those two things melding really well, right? It's a predecessor to Steins Gate. There's a clear lineage there. And somewhere in the middle of that spectrum is your friend and mine, Hideo Kojima, making Snatcher and then later Police Knots. That is the trajectory that Famicom Detective Club is sort of at the start of. But they are rough games, especially to go back to, because they are so early. And they have this problem that a lot of Japanese adventure games have, including the ones from Kojima that I love so much. Multiple times you will be in a scene where you sort of have to do the same thing multiple times until the story is ready to progress. So you sort of like, imagine you have a menu of verbs, right? See, look, talk, examine, pick up, these sorts of things, right? And then you are on a screen with a character and maybe some items in the background related to your investigation. Obviously, you want to pick up the items and you want to talk to the character. You might need to present the items to the character to get certain dialogue and such. Typically, you have to exhaust all of your options to progress the story. It's not really an investigation because it's a very linear video game and it can't be. They made it in the 80s. But a couple years ago, they remade that duology of Famicom Detective Club games for Switch. And those came out in English, which was the first time that those games have been officially available in English. They're fan translations. For a very long time, there was just a fan translation of a remake of the second one that came out on the Super Famicom. I want to say Super Nintendo, but you know what I mean. There was a remake, and that got a fan translation, I think, from those sickos at Aeon Genesis that gave us so many classic Japanese games in a way that, you know, people like you and me who can't read Japanese can enjoy them. Those remakes are very faithful, which is a downside because they have that problem of having to exhaust all of your options to move forward, which is, it's kind of boring. It's kind of boring and it's not very intuitive. You don't feel like a detective so much as you feel like somebody reading a mystery novel. And I think that is sort of not good enough for me now that I've lived in a world where I've played a game like Disco Elysium or LA Noire, where there is more of an actual systematic way to be a detective. Like you're solving a mystery. I want a game where you're trying to solve mysteries and you can fail. I guess that's Shadows of Doubt. Shadows of Doubt will be that when it's actually finished, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that it will scratch that itch in a real way. Anyway, the thing about those remakes that makes them absolutely worth visiting, even though the design and the progression is a little archaic because of how faithful they are to the originals, the remakes themselves were made by Mages, which is a studio that is a visual novel studio. Mages is the studio that has put out the Science Adventure series, which is where Steins Gate is from. And let me say this, if you haven't read Steins Gate, it's absolutely worth reading. I think it is a beautiful work despite some, you know, I'm just gonna chalk it up to some cultural differences and I'll leave it at that. I think there are some cultural differences on display there that at some point you have to be willing to accept and just look at the narrative for what it is. And I think that the narrative as it is a very interesting examination of choice and consequence, and it's a beautiful love story in some ways, in ways traditional and very non-traditional. Steins Gate's amazing. I have a lot to say about that game, and maybe someday I will. But today, I really want to focus on this Famicom Detective Club. Those remakes are absolutely fucking gorgeous. The art, the animation, even the way that they have translated the sound design into a more modern arrangement, like they've, you know, redone the music with more instrumentation and all of that, so it sounds like actual music instead of a little bit more blippy bloopy, which is what it was originally. Not that that's bad, I'm not gonna say chiptunes are bad, but you know what I mean. It's a different level of presentation that I think is more impressive when done well. I'm gonna stop here and watch this new video where they are revealing the Famicom Detective Club thing, because it looks like they're talking to the director or the producer, and I want to hear what that person has to say before I wrap this up. I am excited about the idea of them revisiting something as specific as Famicom Detective Club, and I feel that if they really do the Nintendo thing of trying to iterate and change, that it could be really beneficial this time. because Famicom Detective Club, presentationally, the level of those remakes is phenomenal, especially I think for the price that you're paying for them. Like, they are great entry-level visual novels or entry-level Japanese adventure games, if that is something that you are interested in checking out. I want to see how they plan to iterate and change on what I assume was by design very deliberately faithful remakes with a modern experience. I'm expecting that they won't just, write a new story and present it the same way that they did those two games that originally were designed, almost 40 years ago. And I want to see what a 2024 Nintendo team can come up with in this format that I really like, this Japanese adventure game format. So I'm going to watch this video, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you some more. So get excited for more talking. Okay, I watched the video. So first of all, it's way shorter. There's way less information than I assumed, and it is very much still a teaser, but it is the kind of teaser that I like. It's the kind of teaser you see a little bit more of in film than with games. They sit down a creative, they point the camera at them, and it's sort of a condensed interview. So they're talking to Yoshio Sakamoto, who they imply is sort of very important to Famicom Detective Club. They make it sound in the video like he wrote the original two, so I'm just going to assume that that's true. Sakamoto is also the series producer on Metroid, which scares me a little bit because I think that means he wrote Other M, and in fact I think he did write Other M, so I'm a little hesitant in my excitement. But the way he is talking in this video, he is talking like, oh, we made these original games 30 years ago, and 3 years ago when we made these remakes, I realized we should make a new one. And that verbiage makes me feel that my assumption that they want to sort of modernize and make a actual new game and not just use the framework from the remakes to tell a new story is going to be true. So I'm very excited about that because I feel that they have convinced me that that's what they're shooting for. We'll see, of course, when it comes out. I think late August is what they're saying. So real soon, Famicom Detective Club Part 3 is coming out. I'm really interested. It's the same central character. It is the same detective agency from the original two games. Since, they made those remakes recently, I think that there is a very good possibility that they will have a lot of consistency visually and in the voice department that I think will make the series feel really at home on Switch in a way that it'll probably be, retroactively, it'll be easy to say that, hey, if you want to play Famicom Detective Club, the Switch versions are like the definitive way to play Famicom Detective Club. They didn't smooth out a lot of the edges in those first two, but again, the presentation is so good and so expertly crafted that I can't help but say, like, if you're interested in this type of game at all, you should absolutely check one of those out and see if it's for you. They're both very similar from a gameplay perspective, but the stories are different. So I would recommend getting one instead of maybe the double pack or whatever. I don't know if they're 20 or 30 or something, but they're not full-priced games. They are good. They're cool. They're really cool. I'm excited about this new one. I want to see if there's a store page for it. I'm very curious to see what they're charging for this. There does seem to be a page here. Okay, so it's not quite full price. This one's $49.99. We'll see how that fits. I don't know what to expect as far as length or anything goes. I would assume it's probably going to be a little bit longer than the old ones. I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be quite different. I think that the main connective tissue will be the writer and the presentation. But I think gameplay-wise, I hope gameplay-wise it's different. I hope it's more interesting there. I'm very interested in the story that he's telling. I think that the hook is interesting. I think that him sitting there and being like, I think the ending will be divisive because I really got to write what I wanted to write on this is cool from a creative standpoint. We'll see if that's true. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, even though, Other M is not the most exciting thing in the world to look at as an example of what this particular creative can do in a writing capacity. But again, he wrote those first two, and I like those first two. So maybe when he's in that mode, it's better. And also, Other M was a while ago. This person has grown and presumably changed at least somewhat. I guess we've seen a bit of that in Metroid. I think Metroid Dread handled story stuff in an interesting way. And I don't know if I'll say like graceful way, but it was better than it typically is in Metroid, but in a way that wasn't overbearing and kind of took away what made Metroid feel like Metroid. So anyway, we'll see if Famicom Detective Club Part 3 remains true to its roots, or if it grows out a little bit further, but I for one am hoping for the latter, and I think there's a pretty good chance we'll get it. So any opinions you have, I'd be super interested to hear about them. I love reading comments on these videos, even when they get a little mean, because sometimes you guys give me just completely new insight into thinking about these particular games before they come out, or things I'm excited for. And also it's fun to see some of that excitement from other people. So if you have thoughts, theories, opinions about this new Famicom Detective Club, Emio, the smiling man, please hit me with them. I'll be looking forward to reading those. Thanks for watching.